Welcome to episode 5 of the Dare to Dream podcast, where we give you an honest and unfiltered look into what it's like to go after your dreams and find what lights your soul on fire. So on this episode, we're going to be talking about resistance, which is the voice in your head that tells you you're not good enough.
We'll also dive into how in scary movies, they often don't show you what the monster looks like, because the power of the human imagination is scarier than reality.
It's true. So we had a lot of fun with this one. Let's get started.
How have you been experiencing resistance lately? Like, how's that been coming up for you?
Yeah, so with writing, I think it's just kind of feeling that my worth as a writer is going to pay off in the end, and that I'm worth it to kind of enter this profession of writing, which is since the beginning of time it's very kind of important thing, and I guess there's just a lot of pressure to find my own voice in writing and find my own way, and just kind of measuring up that I can actually do it. I can become a writer, and part of it's because I really do love it, and I want that to be fully portrayed in everything that I do. But I think it's just also partially because it's something that's really kind of new in my life. Like since I graduated college, it was just kind of what I asked myself a lot is like, how did I fall into this? Like, how is this really my life now? Like, this is my passion, and I have to remind myself that it is my life, and this is what I love to do, and what will potentially do for the rest of my life. So the resistance is what tells me you don't stack up to the greatest writers of all time. You don't. Like, I read these books of just classic literature, some of my favorite books, and like, how am I ever gonna write something like that? But obviously, like, just take it a step at a time. Just start with what I can do now, what I love, and I'll get there. Take the pressure off, and so that's definitely the main resistance I face. Just kind of getting into this world of writing.
So it's kind of that little voice in your head that's asking, how do I measure up against these great people? How do I compare? And it's interesting too, because I've done that in my own life with podcasts. I mean, the podcasts we listen to are incredible, they're well produced, but we're essentially comparing their end product. They're a professional, their end product with our beginning, our start, which is just such a funny comparison. I wonder what it would be like if you went back and read one of those great writers, like first book, or not even a book, first journal entry. Is probably pretty terrible.
Yeah, no, totally. And it is amazing, like, just I have to remind myself how far I've come already, like, on this journey. And right before this, I was working on an assignment for one class I'm taking, a writing class, like a writer's workshop, and I was taking some feedback that some classmates had said and kind of writing a new draft. And just even looking at my first draft, I kind of had to think. I was like, what? I kind of forgot like what the draft was like, and so what did I even write about? I kind of forgot. Then looking back, I was like, this is actually pretty good. Like, okay, this is not bad. I feel good about this.
Who wrote this?
And then, who wrote it? It wasn't me. So even just like from one draft to the next, from one day to the next, just keep getting better. I just tell myself, just put your heart into it, and the good will come through, and it's just gonna keep going from there. It's the beginning of the journey.
Yeah, I think for me, now that I know what resistance is, that was a huge positive, because before, whenever I'd have these negative feelings or resistance to doing work, to working on the nonprofit, or to writing, or even to this podcast, I would feel guilty, because here the two of us we're proclaimed dreamers who are going after what we love, and I would feel really guilty because I would ask myself, who am I to feel unmotivated, unsatisfied when I'm quote unquote living the dream?
Right. And
I think what was the most important part for me was realizing that resistance is a real thing, and that everyone experiences it. It took away some of that guilt, and it named that invisible force that was fighting against us, which I think is necessary in order to fight back. You kind of have to know what you're fighting.
100%. So should we just kind of give a nice clear say what resistance is really as we see it. So to lead us off.
Yeah. So the actual definition of resistance by Steven Pressfield is this invisible force that attempts to stop you from creating or doing anything that will fulfill your soul or progress you on your path.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, the more important it is to your self-evolution, self-actualization, the stronger the resistance. And I think that stems from a place of being scared to really put yourself out there, because if you fail in a job that you don't love, you can write it off as, I was unmotivated, I was uninspired, I didn't put my heart into it. But if you are passionate about something and you show your true colors and this is what you want to do and you fail at it, it's more of a failure of self, and that's your dream.
Right.
And so the stronger and more committed you are to creating something, the more resistance you're going to face. And it's just that feeling of not wanting to do it, making excuses not to do it,
Mm-hmm.
just the constant voice in your head questioning, am I good enough? How do I measure up? And for me, it's easy enough to overcome. I have to just sit down and rationally think about why I'm doing what I'm doing. But it always comes up right at the beginning, like right when I switch over to thinking about recording another podcast or working on the nonprofit. It's like that initial thought is like, I don't want to do that. Like, it sounds hard.
Mm-hmm.
How's it been coming up for you?
Totally. And a lot of 100% rings true that it's when you, that story I wrote recently just about facing rejection and being inspired by rejection. It's when you feel that, and as a writer, I feel that I'm putting my heart and soul into this, and the fact that it's getting rejected, you could definitely take that in the wrong way and take it personally, as opposed to being like, I didn't really care about this. It doesn't matter that much. I'm just throwing my resume out there and see what happens. This is for an article and submitting it to a publication on Medium. It's this is something I put a lot of effort into. I really spent a lot of time on, and it's really an extension of me and my heart and soul. So when it's you just get that comment back we're gonna pass on this, but thanks for submitting. It's okay.
Okay, buddy.
Perfect. I guess I'll submit another one. So that's why we made the Dare to Dream publication. It's I feel like we want to give a voice to people who just want to say what's in their heart and soul, and that's what we want to do. And it shouldn't be regulated, but obviously publications on Medium, a lot of them are very niche, and you have to be writing in their tone and everything. So, but feeling resistance in that aspect, that's really something that's part of you that you're putting out there. It makes you almost not want to even do the thing in the first place.
Yeah.
I'd be do I want to say what I really want to say, and then have that be rejected, or do I want to just appease the masses and say what they want me to say? And that's 5 steps to find your true potential. I don't know, just the blog posts I see all over the place, but I'm realizing more and more is that I'd much rather write what I want to write about, and that's sometimes it won't even have a purpose, and it'll just be a story of what's on my mind and what I'm feeling, and that's really what people I've noticed I've connected to a lot more.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the next step of the journey is just really making the Dare Dream publication, building that up, and filling it with people who want to tell their story, and it's where me and you are going to continue to share our story, and so that's really exciting. But
so I think one of the hard parts too is when you write something from the heart, you write something that you're really excited about. When that gets rejected, would you feel like they were rejecting you? It was almost like they're not rejecting my writing, they're rejecting me.
Right. Yeah, in a way. I see what you're saying. That's it's I'm not good enough.
Mm-hmm.
Because my writing is me, and apparently I wasn't good enough to make it on this. But I'm definitely starting to learn, and through that article, inspired by rejection, it's not about you. It never really is being rejected. You have no idea what's going on in the other person's life. Millions different options there about what can be happening, but it's really not about you, and you got to be inspired by it to keep going and keep facing that rejection, because ultimately somebody's, you know, going to connect with what you're saying, because you're saying it in a way that only you can, and that's what people connect to in this universal human experience. And that's what I love to write about, and I think that's what, you know, is connecting us on this journey.
Yeah.
We're trying to work through something real. That's like, we're trying to figure out, you know, what our purpose really is. And I think like this podcast and writing have been just instrumental for us in figuring out what that is and just kind of clarifying.
Yeah, rejection is something we're all going to deal with. And it's interesting. I've been fascinated by reading about rejection. And I told you this book, Rejection Proof.
Mm-hmm.
I told you about that. Basically, this guy decided to see if he could get rejected 100 different ways while filming it.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the tasks he decided to do was see if he could plant roses in people's gardens. And so he went door to door knocking on people's doors, asking if he could plant roses in their front lawn or like their front garden area.
Right.
And he knocks on this one person's door, and the guy, he's like a grumpy old man, comes out, and he goes, I'm sorry, sir, but can I please plant a rose bush in your front garden? And the guy looks at him and goes, no. Are you serious?
Yeah.
No. And the person who was asking the question, he stresses, the author of the book, he stresses that you need to always ask why you got rejected, and not from like a smart aleck or condescending kind of way, but just ask why so you genuinely know. Because as you mentioned, it's never really about you.
Mm-hmm.
And so he asks this old man, like, why can't I plant a rose bush in your garden? He's feeling like a complete lunatic. And the old man goes, well, my dog is allergic to roses. And last time someone planted roses in my front lawn or front garden area, my dog ate them and threw up all over the house. And so the guy walks away from it realizing that it has nothing to do with him. This old man had a previous weird encounter with roses and his dog, and that's why he can't do it.
Legit.
So, I mean, I know you can't really ask the publications why they passed on you. Maybe you can.
I can, you know, that's a great point. I usually just kind of write it off, because I'm like, on the next one, like I'm like trying to kind of transition to see it as like not personal, but maybe there is a reason to ask why, and there definitely is. That's a great lesson.
Yeah. And then another big, powerful takeaway of defining resistance and just learning about that is that for me, as I mentioned earlier, you really define what you're fighting.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't really fight back against that which you can't see. But once you understand that it's there, define that monster you're wrestling with, it makes it a lot easier. And it also makes it a lot less scary. And I had a recent realization that that's exactly what scary movies do. And so I remember I was in 6th grade and I was watching When a Stranger Calls. And that movie scarred me for a couple reasons.
Yeah.
First is that in the middle of it, I was watching it at a friend's house, and his dad was a bit of a jokester, and we were watching it late at night. I was, in 6th grade, I'd already had like 12 Mountain Dews. We were fired up.
Jacked up on Mountain Dew.
And in the middle of the movie, his dad decided to go put on like a black cloak, go get an axe from the garage, and come around to like the sliding glass door, just in the middle of the movie, start banging on it with an axe.
Gnarly.
So that was one part of it that has never, I've never been the same.
It does scar a lot of people.
But what I remember is that, and what stayed with me this whole time, is that the movie was so terrifying because you didn't know who was calling. You didn't know if it was a man or a monster, who or what it was.
Mm-hmm.
And in the last scene, they end up showing who's calling, and it turns out to just be some like sketchy looking dude, but he's human. And once you see him, it made the whole movie so much less scary. And when thinking back to some of the other scary movies I used to watch, it was always so much scarier before they actually showed like the evil spirit or the bad guy, because you can't really capture that. You can't match the power of the human imagination in terms of what it's thinking up. And so going back to resistance, like bringing this full circle, is essentially now that I know what I'm up against and I've seen it and I can define it, it's so much less scary to fight.
Totally. It's 100% natural that we have these feelings that we're not worth it, we don't measure up, and who are we to even be trying in the first place? Like, that's what I feel with just writing, and there's these writing is just such a intense just the history of it, and it's like there's so much I feel like I have to know, and that like I really have to master before I'll be worth it. I'm like, why should people read my writing in the first place? And that's the resistance telling me that you're not worth it and you don't stack up. And so I wanted just to talk about Steven Pressfield. You mentioned him earlier, and just kind of say who he is. And so he's a writer, and he wrote one of my favorite books. It's a classic called The War of Art, and it's all about this resistance. So this is kind of what the main topic of the day. And so should we just rattle off a couple of our favorite quotes from the book and kind of just dive into them a bit?
Yeah, let's do that. I have one question for you before.
Come on in.
Would you, if you had the choice to not write, would you do anything else? Because we're talking about how hard it is, and I'm talking about how hard the stuff I'm doing is, but I wouldn't do anything else. And this is exactly where I want to be and where I know I'm supposed to be. We're just acknowledging that it's really hard sometimes.
100%. And I love that you asked that. I really just wrote about it in this article from over the weekend, and like I do ask myself that like pretty often, like what would I do if I stopped writing? And I think about it, but then I want to write to work through the problem. It's like, okay, so even if I don't make it, like if I don't make it, which what's that really mean? If I don't become successful, I know that I want to write because it's the only way or the best way that I've found to really work through our problems of like trying to find our purpose in this world and find meaning in it all. And so like at this moment, I don't know what I would do if I stopped writing, just to kind of for a creative outlet, just to kind of get to know myself the deepest way that I can. And at this point, full steam ahead. Like why not give it everything we got and see what we can really make out of this life. It's gotta be, somebody's gotta freaking change the world.
Yeah.
Someone's gotta change the world. Let's do this. That's but still no pressure.
Gotta change the world, no pressure. I know what you mean though. It's there is no pressure. Like or at least for me, all of the pressure that is there is self-created.
Right.
And so when I take a step back and I look at how much I've grown in the past 3 months, look at all of the beautiful new areas of my life that I never experienced before, they outweigh the potential hardships and negatives by so much that I'm just really grateful to be in a situation where I can do this, to be on this insane roller coaster of self-discovery.
100%.
It's just I'm so grateful for it. It's incredible.
Same, man. Like it really has been just this COVID period, and it's been life-changing for it's changed all of our lives, and adapting to it, and it's been a time to really reflect and ask ourselves the questions that me and you have asked ourselves at the beginning of this, and it allows you to leave your job and really change your entire life, and me too, and kind of just see where it takes us.
Yeah.
That's all you really do.
You should pull up some of the quotes on resistance, but another, while you pull those up, one thing I've been thinking about recently is how resistance is so insidious that it'll even make me think about like what you're doing. And I was telling you this earlier, but sometimes I look at your writing and how you're focusing all on writing, and the little voice in my head is like, oh, like Vinny's doing it better, like that's how you should do it. You should focus all your energy on one thing. And it's just so interesting because I want the absolute best for you, and we're in this together, but like that little voice could somehow like start comparing myself to you. It's just like so prevalent, and
totally
it's always there.
Well, I really appreciate that. First of all, I mean, like, so grateful to be on this journey with you. But yeah, I definitely see it like the same way. Like, it seems like because you came out of the gates hot and you found Epoch Academy, this is really like huge life change for you, and it seems like you really found a calling like almost immediately. Just the stars aligned, which is incredible. And sometimes I feel like I don't have such a clear path. Like it's kind of dabbling in different stuff, but it is all centralized around writing. Like that's what I love to do. But I feel like as long as we're loving what we're doing, no matter what it is, then it's the best thing that we can be doing. And yeah, writing is the thing that is the crux of like everything that I want to do in life, because it really just helps me see life in a different way. And I know me and you both we'd probably be traveling the world right now if we were able to. Like, we want to really get the most we can out of life. And writing and just helping people, trying to inspire people by exploring ourselves and what we want out of this life is the best way to do that. Because we definitely don't have the answers, but just keeping an open mind and like talking it through is the best way I've found to really find what we want out of life.
Yeah, to have these really open and honest conversations.
Yep.
It's pretty refreshing to have these.
Totally.
So what are one of the quotes about resistance that will paint it with a little more color than what we've been saying?
Yeah, so, we could go a couple different ways here. I'll start just with the one that kind of spoke to me, and just what we're trying to do right now is inspire people and motivate. And resistance told me I shouldn't seek to instruct or put myself forward as purveyor of wisdom. That this was vain, egotistical, possibly even corrupt. That it would work hard on me in the end. That scared me. It made a lot of sense. What finally convinced me to go ahead was simply that I was so unhappy not going ahead. I was developing symptoms. As soon as I sat down and began, I was okay. And we're putting ourselves out there and like trying to inspire people by being our most authentic selves and figuring out find meaning in it all. But I always get this. It's like, who am I to be telling people like how to live life? And I'm just trying to figure it out myself. Like, I have no idea there's no universal truths. Like, everything we know is because of how history's been written. And we're where we are because of just the webs of meaning that have been spun throughout time. And like, I don't have the answer. Like, we don't have the answers. But honestly, just talking about them and just connecting. Like, I hope this can be just a platform to connect with people. It's not like it's us versus or us over other people. It's really just like we want to open up. And so I think that's like that quote really spoke to me. And so the resistance in that sense would just be why should I be a purveyor of wisdom, as it says?
Yeah.
Like, what wisdom do I have that I can help other people with?
I love that that how it ends. As soon as I sat down and began, I was okay.
Yep.
That resonates with me so much, because so often I overthink things. I think about, even if it's a little task that I've never done before, I think about the 3,000 different ways that it could be difficult or something will come up. And as soon as I sit down and actually do it, that's when the resistance goes away, because you're starting.
Mm-hmm.
But all of that overthinking it was just a waste of mental resources.
Yep.
Because you sit down and you figure it out. It's as easy as that. So what I've been trying to do in the past few weeks is just think less. I know I have to do something. The other day I had to set up a PayPal account for the nonprofit, and I was just thinking too much about it. And then as soon as I sat down, I figured it out. And so that's kind of my new philosophy is think less, do more, and then reflect. Because the reflection is the key piece. You can look back and figure out what worked well, what didn't work. But just thinking less in the beginning is really what I'm trying to do.
That's, so true. That really spoke to me as well. It's like, just what we're doing right now. Like, we didn't even want to do this podcast. Like, not that we didn't want to, but we're like, just starting is tough. Like, just sitting down and doing it. But once you do, it's like, of course, the same thing with writing. Like, a blank page is extremely daunting. Once you just sit down and start with just speak your mind and speak from your heart, then it kind of just opens up, get the ball rolling, and you realize that it will be okay. You'll be okay. Another one that one of my favorites from the book. So these are all from The War of Art, Steven Pressfield, just to recap there. Self-doubt can be an ally. That's because it serves as an indicator of aspiration. It reflects love of something you dream of doing, and desire to do it. If you find yourself asking, am I really a writer? Am I really an artist? Chances are you are. Counterfeit innovator is wildly self-confident. The real one is scared to death. So, you know, people have been here before, the same seats as us, questioning if they really have what it takes to create something in the world. But that means that it's something that you really care about, and that goes back to rejection. It's the same thing.
It takes a lot of bravery to create something, anything really, to have the audacity to say that this thing doesn't exist in the world yet, and I want to bring it into the world. It's really cool. That one ends so well too.
It's a good one. It's a good one.
Scared to death. I can relate to that. That has happened to me a few times.
Yeah. It's a good one here. Resistance feeds on fear. We experience resistance as fear, but fear of what? Fear of being ridiculous? Fear of launching into the void? Of hurtling too far out there? Fear of passing some point of no return, beyond which we cannot recant, cannot reverse, cannot rescind, must live with this cocked out choice for the rest of our lives? These aren't the real fear, the master fear. Fear that we will succeed, that we can access the powers we secretly know we possess, that we can become the person we sense in our hearts we truly are. Wow. So I think that's kind of just saying we feel like we know what can happen. Like if everything, you know, if everything worked out, what could truly happen? And we almost fear that. And I forget where I heard this kind of brought up before, but we'd rather just not start at all than asking ourselves, what can we really become?
Reminds me of the quote from Coach Carter. That's essentially like, our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure.
That's it. That sums it up. The movie, Coach Carter?
Yeah. No, I mean, the quote is an original quote that actually had some references to God that they edited out.
Right.
But why do you think, because yeah, that's the truth. Why do you think we're scared to be successful?
Because we don't feel like we measure up. Like, I feel like, you know, like, can I really write fiction? Like right now, I'm like, what I've kind of realized more and more, and what was my plan at the beginning of coronavirus was I was going to go to Japan and teach English and just start writing about my travels. So it'd be nonfiction, and my goal is to be a travel writer. Then like in these classes I'm taking, like I just had to write my first like short story, and it was just a lot of fun, like creating a world out of nothing. And like it was the second one I've done, but it's kind of another story. But just like it kind of opened my mind that like I could write books. Like why not, right? Like fiction, not like why limit yourself? And yeah, we tell ourselves that we just don't measure up, and this is so far out of reach. Why should we be? What do we have that we could give to the world? And I think we're kind of scared to embrace that and say, I do have something worth giving.
We're scared to, if we are successful, we're scared to be found out.
Right.
Imposter syndrome, I know, is a big thing with successful people, especially successful people who become successful in a short period of time. It all boils down to that like fundamental human feeling of not being enough. And that if you are successful, someone's going to find out that you don't deserve it. It's so interesting.
Yeah, I think that's totally it. So
What have been some countermeasures you've put in place to battle resistance, or ways that you've been able to get over it?
It's a great question. I mean, we told ourselves we were going to talk about this, but just starting.
Just start. Walk.
Start
right.
walking, right.
That's all you
Brought
need.
up in the past. That's all I need. Yeah, it is just being like, well, first of all, asking yourselves why you feel that way. I think that's what really gets like down to it. And I, you know, with writing, it's why am I having the fear that I'm not stacking up to like these other writers in my class? And it's like, well, this is so new to me. It's the imposter syndrome. Like it's such a new lifestyle to me, and I feel like it's like I haven't got all these credentials, and I haven't been through like the top programs of the country, and like what skill do I have? But it's just kind of realizing that I'm doing it for me. Like at the end of the day, I'm not doing it for anybody else, and that goes back to if I stopped writing, and then like I realized I want to write just to kind of ask myself the questions that like I need to be asking myself, and so that's really it. Yeah, it's like I know that at the end of the day, if nobody ever reads my stuff, if nobody appreciates it or whatever, it doesn't make a difference. Like I feel so much better after writing, and that's something that I'll never change. And if I don't create this dream life of becoming a writer, travel writer, anything, who cares? It's life, you know. We'll move on.
But
else.
But I really think one, first of all, I think that you will accomplish all of that because you're an incredible writer.
Thank
And two, I think your writing conveys when you read your writing, I can tell that it was written for you. You aren't trying to give someone the 5 easy steps to lose weight or
that's my next article.
change your life. Yeah, it's coming out next week. You're building up to that one. But basically, like, I love how you just describe things, and you really just. It's like when I read your articles, I feel like I'm just talking to you. There's no hidden agenda, and I can really tell, like I said, that it was written for you, and that's a big draw in a time where everyone is trying to sell you snake oil and the easy fix. And so that's why I'm very confident you will be a successful writer.
Thank you, buddy.
And
really appreciate it.
It it's gonna be a long and arduous road to get there.
Arduous road.
But
wouldn't want it any other way.
Exactly. I mean, we're uncovering so many parts of our character that we wouldn't have had before. You know, if it was a comfortable, smooth, easy journey, we wouldn't have delved so deeply into a lot of these topics and asked those really hard questions of ourselves.
Totally. What about you? What do you do to kind of overcome that resistance?
For me, it's reframing. So the resistance, as I mentioned, is strongest when I'm not working on the project and I just like think about it for a second and I'm like, I don't really want to go do that right now. I'd rather just sit here, eat potato chips now. Basically, it's reframing it. So I start thinking about it, or I actually just start doing the project and think through the different steps. So instead of looking at it as, okay, I'm in the business plan right now, I'm writing a sentence that's really frustrating and I can't seem to get it right. I think about, why am I writing the business plan? Okay, I'm writing the business plan so that we can submit our application, become tax exempt. Why am I doing that? So we can be a nonprofit and receive donations. Why am I doing that? So that we can bring professional coaching and personal development to underserved communities. Why am I doing that? Because I believe that I've had a bunch of opportunities in my life that everyone should have the chance to have those. Okay, like why do I believe that? Because ultimately I want to help people and serve others. And why do I want to do that? It's because my mission is to positively impact the lives of everyone I meet. And so I wrote all of that down the other day on a piece of paper that's like all of the different projects I'm working on and what they're pointing towards. They kind of point upwards in an arrow to that top line mission. And that's really how I overcome resistance, is I reframe everything that I'm doing in terms of how it's going to help me accomplish my mission.
Wow. It's a great way to do it. Yeah, breaking it down, and that goes just back to asking yourself questions like, why am I doing this in the first place? And maybe that's something that when we get caught up in careers and things that we don't want to be doing, we kind of overlook those questions, and because we're scared of the answer. Maybe.
Yeah, why am I doing this?
Yeah.
If you don't have a good answer, it means you probably have to change.
Mm-hmm.
Change, as we've talked about before, is difficult, it's scary, requires a lot of effort.
Mm-hmm. It's definitely something we all face. Resistance is every day. It's the first thing that you wake up in the morning and you face that resistance just to even get out of bed.
Mm-hmm.
It's not easy, but there are ways to get through it, and you're not alone. If you're listening to this and feel resistance, hope this could inspire you in a way. But it's important to ask yourself the questions of why am I feeling this way, and attack it from there.